PFAFF Creative 7570, the ultimate technology for the ultimate creativity. With your PFAFF Creative 7570 and your Fantasy Embroidery Unit, you can create your very own special brand of sewing magic. The magic is at your fingertips.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of our how-to video on the exciting world of the incredibly versatile PFAFF Creative 7570. I'm Philip Pepper and this is Linnette Whicker. We're part of the educational staff at PFAFF.
We'll be building and adding to the things you learned in the first video. We'll use some of the optional accessories, do some border embroideries, and shadow applique. Use your Creative Fantasy Unit and make original designs with your creative designer.
We'll also be doing heirloom sewing and free motion embroidery, as well as cut work with Richelieu bars. Those are my personal favorites. Let's start with designing your own pea memories. You have several samples here. Linnette, will you show them to us?
Many of these stitches were designed using the creative designer. This two-piece dress was inspired by antique crazy quilt hand stitches. Most of the designs are pea memory original designs, as well as recreations of antique stitches.
Those are beautiful, Linnette, but some of them look a little advanced for a first try.
Yes, they are. So we'll start with a simple square shape to demonstrate the basics. Here it is, already drawn on the graph and marked at each of the 4 corner points with a dot. We now have 5 dots or stitches. On the graph paper, each stitch has a set of 2 coordinates, B and L. The B coordinates refer to the width, and the L coordinates refer to the length. It's not necessary to know the coordinates to enter a stitch. They can be useful later when you want to fine-tune your design. We've numbered all the dots starting with number 1 at the center left corner. Notice that the side dot has 2 numbers, 1 and 5. The first and last stitch must be made on the same coordinates in order to complete the design. Connect all the dots and number them in order. This will make it easier for you to follow along. Now let's insert the graph into the CD. On each side of the CD there is a clip. Move the clip towards you. Insert the graph into the slot in the front, like this. Now you need to align the graph. Move the magnifier slide around the opening and adjust the graph so that the red cross tracks are along the outer lines of the graph. When it's aligned, lock it in place by moving the clips away from you. Make sure your machine is turned off, and then connect the CD by inserting the plug into the port on the left side of the machine. Turn on your machine now. Select the P memories by pressing the MP key. Press key 1 for the P memories and they are shown across the top of the screen. If there's nothing below the memory number, it's empty. P0 has a stitch in it, see? P1 is empty. Press the key below the empty memory to open it. We'll open P1. Before we enter any stitches, there's one more very important step. Move the magnifier slide around the edge of the rectangle once on the Creative Designer. If you look carefully, you can see a cross moving on the screen. This cross is the cursor, and it follows the same movement as the magnifier slide on the Creative Designer. Stop the magnifier slide in the lower left corner. This step orients the CD with the cursor. This should always be done whenever you plug in the CD. There are 2 keys on the CD. The left key is the Mem Plus key, and it's used to enter the coordinates into the memory. The right key is the memory key, and it's used to search for and then display a specific stitch. We'll use it later when we add and delete stitches. Let's start entering the stitches. Move the slide to stitch number 1. Be sure to center the cross over the dot. Press the Mem Plus key on the Creative Designer to enter. Now to stitch 2, press Mem Plus. Now 3, Mem Plus. Now 4, Mem Plus. And finally 5, Mem Plus. We entered 5 stitch points, but all you can see is the square shape. To display the dots at the stitch points, press the key below the dotted line. Now you can see all the points clearly. We've finished programming your design. Press the key below the sewing machine icon. The display changes from the programming screen to the sewing screen. Here at the lower left are the program width and length icons. On the right is the balance. Below that are two icons. The left one is a box with a C. It clears or deletes the entire memory. Let's press the key below it to show you. A warning message appears asking if you really want to delete the pattern. We don't, so press Escape. The next one is the Edit icon. It changes to the editing screen. This is where we'll make changes later. The machine now treats P1 with our original design just like any other built-in stitch. We can change the width, length, and balance. We can put it into an M memory and combine it with other stitches. For now, let's just sew it. Press the sewing machine icon. Press the single pattern key. Use presser foot 1A with dual feed or 2A. It's sewed out just as we drew it. Stitch. First, access the edit screen by pressing the key below the edit icon. At the lower left is a menu with 3 command icons. By pressing the key below each icon, you can access the delete stitch commands, add stitch commands, or trace the stitching path. The M+ icon lets you add stitches. The Mem icon lets you trace the path of the stitch. The M- icon deletes stitches. Selecting any of these menu options will further change the commands and icons at the right of the screen, and we'll explain these as we use them. Let's delete a stitch first. So, press the key below the M- icon. The commands at the right of the screen allow us to choose where we want to delete a stitch. You move the highlight by pressing the key below them. The first icon, a dotted line with an arrow pointing to the end, means you can delete a stitch at the end of the stitch pattern. The next icon, a dotted line with an arrow between 2 stitches, means you can delete a stitch within the stitch pattern. The last icon is an empty box. It means you can delete the entire stitch pattern. Let's say you want to delete a stitch within the stitch pattern. Number 3. So highlight the second icon. Move the magnifier slide around the outside once. Move the cursor directly over stitch number 3. Press the memory key on the Creative Designer. Look at the screen. It has a question box next to stitch number 3. It's asking if it's okay to delete the stitch. So, the computer has searched for stitches at the cursor position and then displayed the stitch. Yes, we want to delete the stitch. Press OK. There, it's gone. The square is a triangle. Let's sew the change design. Press the key below the sewing machine icon. The single pattern key should still be engaged. The side isn't there, just like on the screen. Let's insert that same stitch back in its original place. Press the key below the Edit icon. The M+ icon is already highlighted. Let's look at the menu at the right to see what the command choices are. The first icon, a dotted line with an arrow pointing to the end, means you can add a stitch at the end of the stitch pattern. The next icon, a dotted line with an arrow between 2 stitches, means you can insert a stitch within the stitch pattern. The next icon, a dotted line with an arrow pointing both left and right, means you can move an existing stitch to a new position. The last icon is a dotted line with a box around several of the stitches. It means you can move a block of stitches as a group to a new location. We want to insert a stitch within the stitch pattern, so we'll highlight the second icon. Move the magnifier slide around the outside once. When you are using this command to insert a stitch between two existing stitches, you must always go to the stitch that is before the place where you want to insert a new stitch. We want to insert a stitch at the side. The stitch before that place is this one, here on the top. So move the cursor directly over stitch number 2. Press the memory key on the Creative Designer. A box opens showing the stitch number. In this case, stitch number 2. The cursor is now attached to a line between stitches 2 and 4. Drag the cursor to the right side corner of the square. See how the line follows the cursor movement? You can move it anywhere you want. Let's move it back to the side and press the Mem Plus key on the CD. The new stitch is now in place and the cursor is no longer attached. We have the original stitch pattern again.
Linnette, I know you design a lot of P-memories. Do you have some little shortcut or helpful hint for our viewers?
Experience is a great teacher, isn't it? For instance, the width of the actual graph is 2 inches. This comes in handy when you're Xeroxing or tracing a design that is larger or smaller than the graph. Just remember, 6 numbers or 3 boxes equals 1 millimeter of actual sewing. This holds true for the length and the width also.
This is good to know when you're placing your stitch points and want an exact size.
Another thing I found out simply from experience is the fewer the stitch points, the better, especially when the design is a straight stitch outline. Another tip too, if your design calls for a lot of satin stitching, it will work out better if you program it to zigzag across the width rather than forward and backward.
Didn't you ever wish a stitch was a little different here or satin stitch there?
Hasn't everyone? And that's another great advantage you have with the Creative Designer.
That's right, Linnette. Let's go to the machine and change one. First, you need to access the P-memories. Press the MP key. Press key 1 to select P-memories. Now open an empty memory. Good, here's an empty one. At the bottom center are 3 words. Card for access to a programmable card, ROM and RAM. ROM gives you access to the built-in stitches, and RAM gives you access to the existing P-memory stitches. Press ROM for built-in. Now we can enter a program number. Enter 194 and press OK. This turtle looks entirely too serious. Let's give him a smile. You will need to see the stitch dots, so press the key below the Show Stitch icon here. That's better. Orient the CD and the cursor. Use the 0 key to highlight the icon of Moving a Stitch. Move the cursor over the stitch at the corner of his mouth. Press the memory key on the CD. Move the cursor up and press the M+ key. Now that we have him smiling, let's give the tail a better attitude also. Move the cursor and press Memory. Move the cursor up. He could have a really long tail. He could also chew on his tail. Maybe a turned up tail will suit him just fine. Press Mem+. Let's sew it out. Press the key below the sewing machine icon in single pattern. Now let's sew the original stitch right next to the new stitch. Press 09, enter 194, and OK. The manipulated one looks quite different, wouldn't you say?
Using the Creative Designer to change stitches can be really limitless. For instance, the heart number 164. We can delete the connecting stitches so that it can be used as a single heart.
It is also useful for stitches like 180 when you want less open space between designs. Here it is sewn normally and axial mirrored. Again, we'll choose a P memory, ROM, and select program number 180. Press OK. We'd like to alter one more for you. This time we're just going to delete stitches. Press the key beneath M-, key number 3. Do you see the upper right icon is highlighted? Yes, we want to delete a stitch at the end. Select Stitch Points, key number 8. Press OK for each stitch you want to remove from the end. Press the key below the sewing machine icon, number 6. The screen now shows what the stitch would look like if sewn out continuously. Do you see the connecting stitch from where we stopped erasing to the beginning of the next stitch? It has a vertical stitch that connects the end of one pattern to the beginning of the next pattern. In this case, we are going to an M memory and axial mirror the design, and the vertical stitch will disappear. Choose an empty M memory. Press OK. Press the MP key. Choose our newly altered number 180. Press OK to store one motif. Press Escape to reselect the same P memory. Press the axial mirror key. Press OK to store. Now, isn't that an attractive variation of this design?
From looking at the new stitch patterns, you'd never guess which built-in stitch was the original stitch. At the rate you're changing stitches, your creative 7570 will have triple the amount of stitches. How about showing us some of your heirloom techniques, Philip?
Sure, Linnette. Heirloom sewing has some of my favorite techniques. The fabrics used in heirloom sewing are very fine, such as organdy and batiste. These lightweight fabrics require delicate seams and finishes. This stitch looks very similar to the entredeux that you can buy. It's very expensive to buy, I might add.
Yes, it's the holes that the needle makes in the fabric that gives it its special look. The wing needle works best on 100% natural fabrics in a sheer to medium weight. If you're in doubt about the compatibility of the fabric and the needle, take the needle with you to the fabric store and push it through the fabric in an inconspicuous spot. If the hole disappears, then the fabric won't be suitable. If it does leave a hole, and it takes a little rubbing to make it disappear, then that fabric will work. Wing needles come in size 100 and 120. The size 120 will make a larger hole. Personally, I use both sizes when doing heirloom sewing. Let's go to the machine and set up for entredeux. The heirloom stitches are all together on the stitch chart. Press the 09 key, then the info key. See, they're right here, group number 6. The group is called hem stitches. Press the key numbered 6. Now you can see all 10 different heirloom stitches. Let's select program 114, which is this one here above the number 5 key. A stitch width of 5 is perfect, but the length needs to be shortened to 2.5 millimeters. It's an elegant stitch. Another stitch we use a lot is program 115. Press Escape to return to the hem stitch group. It's this one above the number 6 key. Change the stitch length to 2.5 and the width to 3.5. This program makes a heavier entredeux. The needle goes into the holes many more times. These stitches can be used anywhere you would use entredeux, and the great thing is that it's always there, ready to use. No running out to the specialty shop.
Using these two stitches instead of the expensive entredeux insertions have another benefit besides being less expensive. You can match the entredeux to your fabric. You're not limited to the colors in the shop. Here's a hint for you. Sometimes when your fabric is a little limp, you can stabilize it by applying several coats of spray starch, but only on natural fiber fabrics. For a firmer stabilizer, the Sullivan's fabric stiffener can't be beat, and it washes out in plain water. It works great on both natural fiber fabrics and blends to stabilize embroidery stitches.
Let's share one more idea before we leave heirloom sewing and go on to other things. It's a type of pin stitch. This stitch is very versatile. It can be used for joining lace to fabric on heirloom projects. In quilting, it's used for an invisible applique stitch or as part of the design. It was used for shadow applique on one of the sunbonnet Sues in this lap quilt. It's nearly invisible because of its tiny size and matching thread color. Many different stitches were used to applique the various blocks. Here's a shadow applique padded box with the same stitch. You can get a clear look at the stitch here because of the contrast color thread and the size of the stitch.
There's a little trick to know about this stitch. You fool the machine into reducing the width beyond the options it gives. Select program number 12, the one that looks like a blanket stitch. We'll use a standard needle. Change the stitch width to 3.0 and engage the pattern mirror key. Sew a little so you can see the width. Now let's engage the twin needle key. This is the only change made. Look how tiny the stitch is now. The trick to making this stitch narrow enough is the twin needle key. When the twin needle key is engaged, it reduces the width of any stitch by 2 millimeters. Program 12 can be reduced manually only to 2 millimeters. You trick the machine into reducing it down to 1 millimeter width by engaging the twin needle key.
Next, let's do some free motion cutwork and Richelieu bars. The design on this collar is an example of cutwork. There is a dark piece of fabric underneath it so you can see the cutouts better. In the open spaces are thread lines or bars. These are the Richelieu bars. Not only do they look good, but they help the cut areas to hold their shape. A hoop is very important when doing cutwork. The fabric must be held very tight or you'll get poor results. Spring hoops, like these, are easy and quick to reposition any place on your fabric. These are wooden embroidery hoops. They are very thin and stronger than a hand embroidery hoop and have a screw that you can use to make the hoop really tight. Your fabric can never move or stretch. It does take time to tighten it up whenever you need to move it.
Whichever hoop you prefer to use, you will need a stabilizer. For cutwork, a water-soluble stabilizer is the best.
It looks like plastic food wrap, but it dissolves completely in water. It will leave a starched feel to the fabric if you don't remove all of it, and sometimes you want the finished piece to be starched.
Cutwork looks great when it has a very crisp look and feel. In fact, I like to crisp up the stabilizer too by pressing it with a medium hot dry iron using a press cloth. Make certain you use that press cloth or you're going to have a mess on your iron. So let's hoop up the work. Place the larger outer ring on a flat surface. Place the stabilizer on top. You'll find 2 layers will give you the best results. Place the fabric on top and finally the inner ring of the hook.
The first thing you do for free motion embroidery is turn off the help screens. You have undoubtedly received wonderful reminders from your PFAFF Creative. If you run out of needle thread, if the sewing foot lifter is not in the correct position, or if the feed dog is in an incorrect position. In the basic setting, this monitoring is disabled when sewing. Let's do it. Press Menu, press 1, press Info, and press the upper cursor key. You are presented with a menu, Machine Stop at Needle Thread Message, in Sewing Mode, in Embroidery Mode, which refers to the Fantasy Unit, and no machine start if presser foot lifter or feed dog position false. The downward pointing arrow icon over key 1 allows you to select the desired function. See, as you press it, it highlights the next one. The X icon over key 2 switches the highlighted function from on to off, or vice versa. We want to turn off the sewing mode and the no machine start if presser foot. Use key 1 to select and key 2 to turn off. No X equals off.
When we finish with free motion embroidery, you will want to turn everything back on using the exact same steps and putting X's in all your boxes.
Do you use a foot for the first stitching, or is your method totally free motion?
Both methods give excellent results, Linnette, but I prefer to use the darning foot. It's a standard accessory that comes with the machine.
Notice the clear bar that sticks up and away from the foot itself, and the silver pin coming out of the black box. To attach the darning foot, loosen the screw at the back of the presser foot. Don't take it all the way out though. Insert the silver pin into the hole below the screw. Make sure the clear finger is behind the needle clamp screw. Now tighten the screw. Your PFAFF Creative has a special darning position for darning and machine embroidery. This is the down or normal sewing position. This is the raised position. Now, if you lower the presser foot while slightly pushing away from yourself, you'll find a position in between the up and down. This is the darning position. It keeps the foot off the fabric when a stitch is not being formed, but it still engages the needle tension. Drop the feed dogs and close the bobbin cover. Select program number 2, a zigzag. Reduce the width to 1.5. You will want to zigzag around the outline first. Put the hoop under the foot and lower the presser bar into the darning position. Stitch around all of your design lines once. Now, trim only the fabric away. Be careful not to cut into the stabilizer. It's not so tragic if you do accidentally clip the stabilizer. Just add another layer of the stabilizer underneath. This stitching and clipping should be done in sections. Only clip the section that is currently in the hoop. If you cut away too many large areas, you run the risk of distorting the whole embroidery. This is the time to make the Richelieu bars. They're always made before the final satin stitching. Change to a straight stitch and stitch across the cutouts right on the stabilizer. Make sure that you secure the beginnings and ends very well. If you don't, they'll pull out. Next, you cover the straight stitch with a satin stitch. Select program 2, the zigzag again. Change the stitch width to 2. The length doesn't matter since you're moving the hoop and controlling the stitch length. Satin stitch over all the bars, right over the straight stitching. Increase the width to 4 and satin stitch all around the cutout, like this. If your satin stitching isn't quite perfect, don't worry. Go over the first satin stitching again using a wider stitch. About 1 millimeter wider should do the trick. When it's all finished, gently pull off as much of the stabilizer as you can. The little bits left will dissolve in water. Then press face down on a towel. This way you won't flatten the satin stitches. You'll be making them stand out more. Don't you just love the look of cutwork? And you make it look so simple, Philip.
Linnette, it is simple once you get the knack of it. This next technique of embellishment allows you to create texture automatically by machine. This vest has a built-in stitch design that was sewn with the bobbin embroidery technique. Bobbin work is exactly what it sounds like. We wind a decorative thread onto the bobbin. The reason for doing this is so we can use a wider range of threads to embroider. Any thread that will not fit through the eye of the needle can usually be wound onto the bobbin. Since the thread we want to show is in the bobbin, we will now be sewing with the right side of the fabric face down against the needle plate.
These threads are very interesting. Isn't this one especially pretty?
These are only some of the threads that can be used in your bobbin case, but first let's talk about stabilizers. You can use freezer paper, stitch and tear, or a water-soluble stabilizer. We're going to use the stitch and tear today. The stabilizer goes against the wrong side of the fabric, even though we'll be sewing upside down. Use an all-purpose thread of a matching color in the needle. You can hand wind your bobbin like this, but if you prefer to use the machine's bobbin winder, this is how you would proceed.
Place the bobbin on the pin and disengage the hand wheel. Hold the spool in front of the machine. A pen or pencil works nicely. Bring the thread up the groove and into the take-up lever from left to right. Now bring the thread around the silver clip, the opposite of normal bobbin winding. Go under the tension disc and straight across to the bobbin. Remember not to bypass the tension disc completely. Putting a little tension on the thread will make a more uniform bobbin. It will also wind a few more yards of decorative thread onto the bobbin. We'll use the metal bobbin because it will hold a little bit more. Wind the thread end clockwise around the bobbin several times. Hold on to the end and with a slow but steady speed, fill the bobbin. Be careful to wind it evenly. That's a lot quicker than winding your bobbins by hand, isn't it?
Since we're putting the heavy thread in the bobbin, we need to make a tension adjustment on the bobbin case. Your bobbin tension is set for using all-purpose thread, which is much lighter in weight than what we're now going to use. The standard sewing setting is going to place too much tension or drag on the thread. And what will happen is that the bobbin thread will pull the needle thread to the bobbin side. This is not the look we're going for now. Having an extra bobbin case that you can play with the tension is ideal. We want heavy thread to lay flat on the fabric. To achieve this, place the bobbin into the case backwards. Do you see that it rotates counterclockwise? Now you need to loosen the bobbin case tension. The large black screw is the tension screw. We need to turn it counterclockwise to loosen it. You don't need a screwdriver. Just press your thumb against the screw and turn. Loosen it until the thread pulls smoothly and without any resistance. Insert the bobbin case into the machine and bring up the thread.
Program 218, a maxi stitch row of flowers, looks very pretty done in bobbin embroidery. So let's do that one. Set your needle tension at normal and place the fabric face down on the needle plate with the stabilizer facing up. The first thing you need to do is to bring the bobbin thread to the top of the fabric. If you leave it under the fabric, you never know where it is, and it almost always winds up being sewn down exactly where you don't want it to be. Now let's sew.
As you can see, it's a very bold look. Ribbon thread is another decorative thread that works wonderfully in the bobbin. It's about 1/8 inch in width and very soft and flexible. Wind it onto the bobbin in the same way, but be careful because it tends to twist and tangle up.
We already have a bobbin wound, so just put it in the bobbin case and bring it to the top. Now put your fabric under the presser foot. This time, select program number 152, a lovely row of bows. Keep that even, slow, steady speed. Great, thick, rich texture and very effective.
Silk ribbon in the bobbin case is fun and easy, as you just saw. Linnette and I also like to do another technique, which is free motion silk ribbon embroidery. To do this, lower the feed dogs below the needle plate and use monofilament in the needle and cotton in the bobbin. For free motion silk embroidery, we first need to remove the presser foot and place the fabric in an embroidery hook. The first step is to tack the silk ribbon down to the fabric with a simple straight stitch. After tacking, trim the excess silk ribbon away. Travel with a straight stitch the distance you would like the petal to be. Lower the needle into the fabric and wrap the silk ribbon around the front and the back of the needle to form the loop. Take one stitch out and tack the loop down. Now travel back to the beginning and tack the silk ribbon. To make additional petals, travel with the straight stitch, lower the needle, wrap the silk ribbon, pull up to form the loop, one stitch out, one over, and back to the beginning, and tack again. It's a very easy, fun technique. Bobbin embroidery can be a very dramatic look and lots of fun to experiment with. When you know that you can try decorative things on the bobbin, it opens up a whole new range of resources. Now you can go into yarn and needlecraft shops and find some great yarns, threads, and some interesting stuff to use.
We should mention that you don't have to use just maxi stitches for bobbin work. Some of the other built-in stitches work just as well. Some of the satin embroidery stitches will look very nice if you increase the stitch length so that they don't pile up on the fabric. There are 3 rules for bobbin work, and they are: number 1, experiment; number 2, experiment; and number 3, experiment.
You're so right, Linnette. Those are good rules for making the most of your creative also. Anytime that you spend experimenting with your machine, the stitches, threads, fabrics, accessories, and techniques will always be worth it. Keep a sample book of all your experiments and the settings. This is a great reference tool. When you get an idea and try it out, put it in your sample book. I even keep the ones that don't work out the way I had originally thought they would. Even the disappointments can spark an idea for a different fabric or thread.
A reference book can save you lots of time, too. You'll have all the information right at your fingertips, just when you need it most. Welcome to the wonderful world of the PFAFF Fantasy Unit.
This is so easy to use. I'll bet they couldn't wait and have already tried it out.
That's oh so true, but we'll start at the beginning. First, you must always remember to have the power turned off to plug in or unplug the Fantasy. The unit is exactly the same width as your PFAFF. Line up the edges and insert it firmly. This is the clip that holds the hoop in place, and this is the release button for the fantasy unit.
Remember to always have the power off to plug or unplug the fantasy unit.
That's right, and the surface must be flat. Make certain that no stray pins or anything else are underneath the fantasy unit. It must be perfectly even with the machine.
There are two sizes of hoops. The smaller equals 80 millimeters and the larger equals 120 millimeters. The hoop has the tightening screw in front and pointing diagonally to your right. It is tilted this way to give you a convenient grip on it. The two tracks insert this way. The clip will click into place. Push the clip down to remove the hoop. Now let's hoop the fabric.
Loosen the screw. Have a nice, clean, flat space on the table. Standing up is usually the easiest way. Lay the large outer hoop down on the table. Place your fabric over it. If the fabric is thin or a knit, use a tearaway or cutaway stabilizer underneath the fabric in the hoop. Delicate fabrics, like this silk, can be protected with 2 layers of water-soluble stabilizer hooped with it, one on the top and the other underneath. Back to our hooping. Push the inner hoop into the outer hoop, making the fabric taut in the hoop. Tighten the screw as tight as it will go. Test the fabric at the center of the sides. If you can get the fabric to move, either the hoop is not tight enough or the fabric is thin enough it needs to be hooped with a layer of stabilizer. The heavier the embroidery of the design, the more firm the stabilizer must be to avoid puckers and off-register designs.
What we mean by off-register is when a design is inadequately stabilized. Portions of the design draw up smaller than they are intended, and the next sections of the design leave a gap or space unembroidered. The actual card design is perfect. The fabric has just been loose enough to be drawn up. So the moral of this story is, that's right, stabilizer.
If you've ever checked the back side of commercial embroidery, you'll see that they many times use 2, 3, or 4 layers of stabilizer.
So let's choose card number 1 and make certain that it is perfectly clean. Insert it firmly into the card slot on the left side of the base plate. The latch extends out even with the card. To remove the card, push the button and remove. Reinsert. Turn on the 7570. Press the card key. You are given 2 choices on this card: embroidery patterns or monograms.
All the cards are packaged with booklets explaining the stitches.
The numbers in colored boxes are for the order of colors. The arrow numbers indicate the color is repeated. The pie shape is the time required for embroidery. The arrow centimeter measurements are the sizes of the embroidery design. The maximum size is 120 by 120 millimeters, approximately 5 inches by 5 inches. The 1:1 with a minus and a plus indicate that the motif is enlargeable and reducible. See, this one goes larger and this one goes smaller. These violets reduce and enlarge.
Do you see the valance for our sewing room? We use the enlarged size because they fit the shape of the valance and coordinate with the border in our wallpaper.
The home decorating with embroidery is limitless. Did you happen to notice our cross-stitched framed art? Also from card number 1. Let's choose number 1 for embroidery patterns.
Use the large blue cursor keys to scroll through the card. The top of the screen gives you the card number and name. On the upper right corner is 1 of 5, which means this is the first of 5 screens. There are 5 designs per screen. For example, the butterfly is over the small white numbered keys 1 and 2. Either key will select the butterfly. But first, let's take a tour of the card. press the upper cursor key. Actually, this is the most difficult part of all, trying to decide what you want to embroider first. They're all so appealing. Let's do the organized approach. The butterfly is beautiful and first, so press key 1 or 2. Your screen is going to guide you through your setup. We have already covered our 120 frame. Swing the attachment box over to the left, but only this far. Open the cover and lower the feed dogs. We're going to use a pre-wound bobbin of strong cotton embroidery thread that has 100 yards on it. So that our bobbin monitor light can let us know when the bobbin is low, we'll peel the cardboard sides off. It may appear that this is breaking the bobbin, but not so. This is the correct way. And the thread doesn't slide off. It stays exactly as it is. Place it into the bobbin case. Check that it is rotating clockwise. Very good. The bobbin thread color is not generally changed. These pre-filled bobbins are available through your PFAFF dealer and come in either white, which is the most used, or black for working with dark colors. This silver metal with black is the embroidery foot. To attach the embroidery foot, loosen this screw until you can see through the hole. The round rod inserts into the hole, and the black arm is spring-loaded and rests on the back side of the needle bar clamp. The silver rod goes all the way through the holder and extends slightly on the left-hand side. Tighten the screw as tight as possible and retighten for each motif. Now, lower the presser bar while pressing it to the back. It will come to rest at a position between up and down. Can you see the cutaway in the housing that it rests on? Good. The threading is so very important. We'll start with Alcazar thread. Be certain that the thread comes up from the back side so that it doesn't put an extra twist on the thread. Pull it through the first guide on either the right or left side of the tension discs. If the presser foot is at embroidery position, the tension discs are closed. One must pull the thread down into the discs or raise the presser foot to open the disc while threading. If the thread is not between the tension discs, there will be major loops of thread pulling through to the bobbin side. Not a pretty sight. Better to make certain it's properly threaded. Continue up and around the take-up lever, then down to the thread guide above the needle. Wrap under the needle threader, push down. Lay the thread in under the hook. Release and allow to raise slowly. Pull the loop through and you have it ready to go. Insert the hoop and press the OK key. Let's go over the LED screen. The butterfly or motif picture is on the left. Color 1.3 tells us we have a 3-color design. Our booklet shows red number 1, blue number 2, and black number 3. The size is 91 by 92. About 3 5/8 by 3 5/8 inches. The 3 graduated size boxes are for increasing or decreasing the size of the design. The minus icon or picture over key 4 will reduce, and the plus icon over key 5 will enlarge if the design has it available. The 90 degrees return arrow icon will turn the motif 90 degrees at a time. This way, you can turn the butterfly or motif to go the direction you want. Press key 7 below this icon and it will tell you how many degrees you have changed it. The 3 outline block icon over key 8 shows the color placement and allows you to choose mono or an individual color to embroider. To have automatic color changes, you must begin sewing at the screen marked 1.3 or however many colors are in the design. The arrow icon over key 9 moves back 6 stitches in the design. We'll go over how that works as we're sewing. The arrow icon over key 0 moves forward one stitch at a time in the design. The large square outline indicates the hoop. The dark block within the hoop represents the motif. The light dot in the middle of the dark area indicates the first or middle of the design. We will center from this marking. The icon of 4 arrow points is selected with either of the cursor keys. This gives us a new screen with which we can move the design around within the hoop. As you hold a cursor key down, the motif moves and the numbers to the left of the loop change. You can see that the motif can be moved up or down with keys 8 or 9 and side to side with the right and left cursor keys. Press key 5 one time. See the motif size change? 2 times. Now the block almost fills the hoop and can only be moved a little bit in any direction. Do you also see a new icon of a square arrow over key 7? This is a trial placement. Many times you will have a garment in the hoop and want to know what portion of the garment will be included in the sewing of the design. For example, there's a seam you don't want it to be on, or another design that you don't want it over. Watch as it traces the area to be embroidered. That's very useful, isn't it? We have completed all the screens. Slide another layer of tearaway stabilizer underneath the hoop. Set the upper tension at about 3 for embroidery and press OK. Hold the upper thread. Press the foot control. Pull up the bobbin thread and hold both. Press the foot control and sew several stitches. Now, clip off the thread tails with these wonderful curved blade embroidery scissors. Now you can press the foot control and the OK key simultaneously, and then release both. It will stop at the end of the color, and the LED screen will prompt you for the next color change. Thread change, color 2. Clip your thread next to the spool. Then clip next to the fabric. Grasp the thread just above the needle and remove. This method of thread removal is recommended to floss your machine and keep the tension discs as clean as possible. This is your ounce of protection. Thread with color 2. Make certain it's between the tension discs. It will be tight. Hold the upper thread and press the foot control. After a few stitches, stop. Clip off the thread tail close to the fabric. Press on the foot control and the OK key together and release. We promised to show you some more details as we are sewing. A major plus with the PFAFF system is if the thread should break or run out, the machine will stop within 6 stitches. We'll just clip the thread here. That's wonderful, isn't it? Absolutely an embroidery saver. The screen message is, attention, needle thread is broken or supply is finished, okay? Now we don't want any stitches to be missing, so we'll press OK. The left arrow icon over key 9 is our perfect way to resume sewing. Press key 9, and the screen message is, press foot control. The pattern is set 6 stitches back. We'll do that. Now you'll carefully rethread. Again, hold the upper thread and press the foot control. Take several stitches. Clip the thread. Careful not to clip the thread from the needle. Press the foot control and OK key together. Release and allow the machine to embroider independently. Now it has slowed to a stop. Clip the threads and rethread with your third color as the LED screen prompts thread change color 3. Carefully rethread, making certain the thread is coming up from the back of the spool each time and that you have it securely into the tension discs. Begin the third color by holding the upper thread and taking a few stitches. Press the foot control and OK. You are off and sewing in the final color. Isn't it fascinating to watch it fill in the colors? You really can't tell where Philip clipped the threads. You are free to choose your own color combinations for the designs to achieve some really remarkable effects. When it stops this time, the screen message is finished. Raise the presser foot. Clip the upper thread. Press the release lever. Push the presser foot to the highest height and remove the hoop. Pull the hoop towards you and clip the bobbin thread. Pop the hoop out. And there you have it. Tear away the stabilizer one layer at a time. Be careful with small, delicate areas like the antenna.
Isn't the butterfly a truly beautiful pattern? This silk organza evening skirt is a magnificent use of the butterfly. Nora Ott designed this with 47 butterflies. The colors are wonderful, and Nora chose them to coordinate with her sequin and beaded evening bodice. You can create so many very different looks. All the card designs are sewn out basically the same way. This time let's use both a motif and a message to be embroidered together in the hoop. Open an M memory by pressing the MP key. Then press key number 2 for an M memory and choose an empty one indicated by the double dashes beside the number and press OK. We now have an empty sequence. Insert card number 1 firmly. Press the card key and select the first screen. We want the little train, which is over the keys number 9 and 0. Press either to select our train. The message on the screen tells us to save with OK. The additional information allows us to change the size of the train up to 104 by 63 millimeters. We are designing for a small child, so let's choose 87 by 53 millimeters. The 90 degrees rotate icon over the number 7 key will allow us to rotate the train prior to storing it. For sewing on a garment, the logical direction is to have the train as programmed. This allows us to put the waistline of the garment around the bed of the machine with the neckline to our left. Definitely the easiest way, isn't it? Press OK to store. You now have the train on your screen right side up, even though we did not change it. It will still sew with the top of the train to your left. Now let's put our label of train underneath it. Press card and select number 2. The first alphabet on the left has uppercase and lowercase letters as well as numerals. The alphabet over keys number 3 and 4, press number 3, are fancy satin stitch monograms with a period and a space to be selected as desired. Let's go back, so press Escape and choose the first alphabet with key number 1. Here we have all the letters, plus numbers, spaces, and punctuation marks. The icon above key number 9 allows us to change the size of letters. Press the key beneath the minus icon to reduce the size down to 17 millimeters, or the key beneath the plus icon to increase the size up to 30 millimeters. All of the alphabets work on the same principle, with different sizes and styles, as they apply to the individually designed alphabet. Let's choose the size 21 millimeters, which is about 3/4 of an inch letter. Press OK. Whatever size you have chosen will be the same for either the uppercase or lowercase letters. You can switch back and forth between upper and lowercase with the key number 0 beneath the capital A, lowercase a icon. Press key number 0. Do you see that the alphabet letters are now in lowercase? Press it again and we are back to our capital letters. Now let's write. Do you see the arrows that point to the key for selecting from the group of 6? Use key number 2 to select the T. Press it twice to move the dark block onto it. This is called highlighting or selecting in techie computer terms. Press OK to store. Do you see the letter T is now in our block space and the highlights has moved to the right of it? It is waiting for your next selection. Select R with key number 5 and press OK. Now A with key number 1 and press OK. I with key number 3, press OK. And for our final letter, N, key number 5, and OK. Our whole train is now on the screen. If a wrong letter got selected or you want to change the message, this is a good time to make the changes. If a letter needs to be added, use the lower cursor key to select the letter after the one you want to add. Select R, for example. Now go to the number keys and select E with key number 1. Add it to the sequence by pressing OK. Now press OK again. At this, you can see that you can add within the word, can't you? But we really don't want these EEs in our train, do we? It is very simple to remove them. First, move the highlight to the letter you want to remove with a cursor key. So use the left cursor key to highlight and then press the clear key to erase. Then move the highlight to the next E and press clear to get us back to our train. When you have finished editing your message and it is exactly as you want it, press the MP key. The message, "Please wait," will appear on your screen as your 7570 puts all of this into the memory for you. The screen now shows you the train with the letters train exactly on top of it. This is not the position we want the letters in, but it is important to note that your PFAFF will always center everything in the hoop until you change it. Let's say you want the letters underneath the train. Remember, they will be centered already. On the right, the top icon is ZO and will zoom in or out so that you can see the overall view of how this relates to each other and the space in the hoop. Use Escape to return to programming. The icon of the greater than and less than is selected with the left cursor key and allows you to move selected parts of the design. Press until the arrow moves to the T. Press OK. Do you see the screen now has a to OK? If you only want one letter or motif, you would press OK again now, but we want to move our whole word as one unit. Press the upper right cursor key until the second arrow is on the end, and now press OK. The "Please wait" message is on the screen while the PFAFF is processing your message. Now you can have up and down arrow icons over the number 9 and 0 keys, and to the right, controlled by the cursor keys, you can move the design right to left. For now, let's just move down with the key 0. Well, maybe up just a little bit with key number 9. That looks great, doesn't it? Store it with the MP key. Now let's sew out our test sample. Now press the OK key. Please wait. This is what the screen looks like when it's ready to sew. Your PFAFF is giving you one last chance to change any and everything before you sew. We don't want to change anything at this time, so press on the foot control. The screen now shows you the first portion of your design. As a unit, you can now turn the design with the 90 degrees key or select mono or individual colors within the train. The arrows above keys number 9 and 0 are used in sewing to progress backward by 6 stitches or forward by individual stitches.
Isn't it adorable? Again, always sew a test pattern first, as we've done here, to make certain that your design is exactly what you want. Before removing from the hoop, mark the exact placement on your test. Now, hoop your little sweatshirt exactly to your markings. Because this is a knitted fabric and you will want the design to look great through many washings, use a cutaway type stabilizer in the hoop with the sweatshirt. It's very important that the knit fabric is not stretched out of shape, but the stabilizer must be taut in the hoop. To keep the stitching from packing down into the knit and getting lost, we'll use this clear, water-soluble stabilizer on top of the knit. You can see how important it is to have the top of the train to the left when you're placing your little sweatshirt onto the machine, can't you? It's definitely the easiest way to hoop this type garment. Having made and marked a test first, your results are so reliable. Don't you just love it? Placing names and messages can be a lot of fun. Usually the next question is, how do you position names or long words? Let's use the name Christine as a sample. Of course, you could just use Chris, couldn't you? But sometimes you want a longer message. Begin by opening an empty M memory. Select the card key. This is card number 1. Select number 2 for monograms, and then 1 or 2 for the upper and lowercase alphabet. Select the letters C, H, R, I, S, T, I, N, E. Remember to confirm each letter with OK. Press the MP key to store. If you have a word that is more than 6 letters, the word will take 2 lines on your 7570 screen. Press the upper cursor key beside the ZO icon. Let's sew Christine, just as it appears on our screen. Press Escape. Press key 9 underneath the sewing machine icon. Hoop and stabilize your test fabric and insert the hoop. Check your settings on the screen and press the OK key. Press the lower cursor key beside the directional arrows to the 4 corners icon to access your sewing screen. Now, because you want all the letters in one color, press key number 8 for mono. This is different from the color 1 ... 1. Color 1 ... 1 will stop after each letter, while choosing mono will sew the name or message continuously. The first position of the hoop will be the exact middle of the first line. Press the foot control and it moves to the lower left-hand corner of the first letter. Very important for lining up letters. Go ahead and sew your complete test sample. Remove your sample from the machine. Before removing it from the hoop, use a disappearing marker to mark the fabric. With a straight edge, draw a line under the letters. Also mark the side of the hoop, because this will aid in the placement of your fabric when you re-hoop for the continuation of letters. Now it's safe to remove the hoop. Measure the first and second line of your test to determine the total length needed. Divide in half. On the pillow top or your project, find the center where you want your name. Measure from the center to the left for the half. This gives you the starting position for your first letter. Make sure your garment, or in our case pillow top, is hooped so that the template begins at your mark. Be careful to have your lines match the markings on the hoop. Insert with stabilizer into the fantasy unit. Stitch until the machine advances to the first letter in the second row. Remove the hoop from the machine. But don't remove the fabric yet. Draw a line under the first part of the name. Remove the pillow top from the hoop. Extend the line to the right. Be generous. You want the line to extend to both edges of the hoop when reinserted. Take the sewn sample and position so that it makes the letters continuous. Re-hoop your project so the second line markings on the hoop match the line under your name. Do you see that part of the embroidery must be inside the hoop? Reinsert the hoop into the embroidery unit. You may need to do some minor adjusting to be certain your starting point is in the proper place. Now, stitch the remainder of your name. This is a great technique for long words and messages. It will also work for you to line up all manner of designs. Would you just look at this wonderful jewelry box? It could also be made in such a way to be a doll box armoire. Test samples were used to position the designs on all the doors and drawers. Just sew your test sample, mark it in your hoop, and you can produce beautiful effects with continuous designs. This cutwork collar is a gorgeous example of what you can do with your test sample and placement. The collar was cut as one piece with the garment and was embroidered prior to the final cutting. Extra fabric is allowed, 3 to 4 inches beyond the pattern, so that hooping is easy. Instead of a straight line, the collar is a curve, and each motif is turned to fit the curve and line up with the previous motif.
The things we have been sewing have all been thick and rich with embroidery, like this attractive snowsuit in polar fleece with the dinosaur on the front panel. Another look, and just as clever as it can be, is to use only the last color and sew only the outline design. The dinos are from card number 2. Also on card number 2 is the super little train, sewn here in heavy red thread. Use the Cotty number 12 thread with a size 100 top stitch needle to achieve great outline effects. The teddy bear from your card number 1 is so appealing and heavily embroidered. It too looks great when sewn as an outline with heavy thread. Don't you just love it? Children's designs are not the only ones for effective outline embroidery. How do you like the baseball from sport card number 9? And the golfers too. You can also use 2 threads through the same number 90 or 100 top stitch needle to create fancy as well as thick looks with the metallic threads and the rayon Alcazar embroidery threads. Here we have our golfer satin stitch filled in on a heavy cotton sweater. Isn't that sportive? Let's briefly go over the technique for sweater knits again. Of course, you sew a test sample of the design first and mark it in your hoop. Determine where you want it placed on the sweater and mark the sweater, or actually any knit, to match the markings on your test. Place a cutaway type backing into the hoop with the sweater, not stretched but straight according to your placement markings. Put clear water-soluble stabilizer on top, or a plastic wrap from the kitchen, or even a dry cleaner's bag on top. Works wonderfully to hold the stitches on top of the knit. Another fabric, or more correctly a non-woven, that can be a challenge is leather. Let's sew a motif to be an applique, okay? Leather does have its challenges, wouldn't you say? If over-perforated, it falls apart, doesn't it? So the stabilizer or backing must be, that's right, a cutaway type. Let's program a monogram with 3 letters from card number 10.
Open an empty M memory, MP key, number 2 key, select the one you want and press OK. Press the card key and then select the framed alphabet with either key 3 or 4. The sizes available here are 61 millimeters to 73 millimeters. You remember, of course, that the size must always be selected prior to the letter. For the small size initials, select 61 millimeters, then letter L and OK. Size 73, H and OK. Size 61, R and OK. Store with the MP key. Please wait. As with all embroidery, there is more than one way to do it, the easy way or the easiest way. Rather than moving the 2 smaller size initials up, just move the center one down to form a diamond shape of 3. Use the left cursor key to choose placement and move the arrow to the H with the same key. Press OK and press OK again. Please wait. Use the arrows and cursor key to move the H. Move it down with the 0 key until the coordinates are x equals 93, y equals 42.5. Press the MP key to store your new arrangement to the memory. Please wait. Press the key below the sewing machine icon, number 9. Follow the screen directions to sew a test pattern prior to the leather. Press OK. Press the foot control. Change the colors to mono with key number 8. Of course, the easiest way is to monogram first and cut out last. Sometimes the easiest is simply not an option. Rather than marking on the leather, if it is a shaped piece, make a pattern template and mark the pattern center lines. Now that you are pleased with your arrangement on the test piece, let's store it onto a programmable, creative card. Press Escape. Press the 0 below the up and down arrow icon that accesses the screen with card over key number 9. Press 9. Your screen prompts. Please use a programmable card, okay? Remove the current card and insert the programmable one. Press OK. The screen shows the M-Memory directory on the card. Choose the empty one where you wish to store the monogram and press OK. The screen now prompts you to insert the card with the following number, 10. Remove the programmable card and insert number 10. Press OK. Please wait. Your design is now displayed on the screen, ready to sew. Press the foot control and the hoop moves to the first pattern of your sequence. Easy, isn't it? Having the extra storage space on the card frees up your M-memories for current projects, and the card saves you time in setting up designs. Let's check our card to make certain our design is there, and then the steps needed to sew the sequence.
Turn the machine off, and now on. Remove card number 10, and insert the creative card. Now press the card key. Select Pattern Sequence. The memory where you stored the monogram now has a dot beside the M memory and the number 3. Select it with the number keys and press OK. The M memory directory now on your screen is the machine directory, and we need to select where to put the monogram. Select an empty memory and press OK. The M memory now shows the dot and number 3. Select it with the number keys and press OK. The screen now gives you 3 choices: cancel sequence, and we don't want to do that. Copy onto card, not that because we already have it on a card. For sewing, use the card with the following number, number 10, okay? We want to make certain it is there, so insert card number 10. Press OK, and press OK again. The screen gives instructions to set up for embroidery. Press OK, and please wait. And great, you have it. Now, let's go over the steps needed to position our suede leather. First, place the cutaway stabilizer into the hoop alone. Mark it for your placement. Use a pattern template and mark the needed lines. Spray the back side of the suede with KK 100 and position it onto the stabilizer. Isn't it just great how it holds the leather? There are times when you will want to make shaped appliques to apply to other items, such as shoes, tote bags, and home decorating items. This heat removable stabilizer will allow you to do just that. We have already placed it in the hoop, set on mono, and have started sewing it in gold metallic thread. Now then, your PFAFF has a bobbin monitor that will warn you when the bobbin is running low on thread. So that you will know how to change it while in a pattern, we have inserted a low bobbin. Begin sewing again. The machine will stop and your screen will read, bobbin thread is low, okay? Swing out the attachment box, open the cover, and remove the low bobbin. Clip the thread close to the machine. Replace with a new full bobbin. Hold on to the bobbin thread while sewing 6 to 8 stitches. Clip off the end of the thread. Now close the cover and swing the attachment box into place. Make sure as you move things around that the embroidery fabrics and stabilizers are not disturbed. Continue sewing. This is certainly a convenient feature, isn't it? You can't even see where the bobbin was changed, can you? The backing is removed by heating and then carefully removing the remains. Quite an elegant touch on these little leather tennis shoes, wouldn't you say? Another fabric that needs to be handled with special care is velvet or velveteen. Treat it the same as terry, with either a tearaway or water-soluble stabilizer in the hoop. Position it with KK 100 or even a fabric glue stick. This will give you marvelous results, like this gorgeous evening gown. What a super combination of textures and the applique design from card number 7. One last tip for sewing before we must go. When you have regular sewing to do with normal seam allowances, it isn't necessary to remove the fantasy embroidery unit. Turn the machine off. Push the embroidery arm all the way to the right. Now turn the machine on. Re-engage the feed dog and replace the embroidery foot with the desired sewing foot, etc. Add your fabric and just sew. Can you see how easy and convenient that is? To remove the fantasy unit, turn the machine off. Push the release button on the left and remove from the back. To fit it into the case or styrofoam container, the clip needs to be pressed to the front, and the arm needs to be over the thickest portion of the foam. The machine should be cleaned as we showed you at the end of the first video.
And we'll do that in a few minutes. But for now, we would like to thank you so very much for being with us.
We certainly enjoyed the opportunity to work with PFAFF's superior equipment and hope we have helped you to more fully enjoy your PFAFF ownership and creativity.